Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Berkeley Political Review. I am joined by another very special guest, so I will have him introduce himself and a little bit about his background.
Well, thank you. It's so fun to be here. Most importantly, the single most important thing in my background is I am a two-time Cal Bear. I graduated from Cal at undergrad and studied political science and philosophy. And then after working on campaigns, I worked on a presidential campaign and ran several other campaigns. I came back and went to law school. So I'm a two-time Bear and met my wife at Cal and loved the university more than anything.
Amazing. Well, so happy to hear all of that. Would you be willing to talk a little bit more about your race for lieutenant governor right now and what led you up to this election?
Yeah, so I'm running for lieutenant governor, which is this really obviously a really important position in California. And I just think we're at this moment right now, and it's a very unique moment where we need to both fight like hell for our values and the things that we cherish, including higher education and our institutions. And we need to deliver for people. We have to make California more affordable. And what concerns me right now, and what is in this difficult moment, is we have multiple political crises. We have a political crisis with a guy in the White House who's literally every single day attacking our Constitution, attacking our communities. We have a climate change crisis. We have an affordability crisis, and California right now is very different than the one I grew up in, where my parents who didn't have college degrees believed that if they could work hard, they could send their kids to really great public schools from kindergarten all the way through law school, which is what I got to do, including at Cal. And you'd be able to have a better life. And now most Californians don't believe that because of the cost of living, because it's become so hard to get into a UC. So I'm really excited about running to tackle these issues, take them head on, and take my Berkeley fighting spirit with me to Sacramento.
Amazing. So, the role of lieutenant governor is one that many people, including college students, don't fully understand. So, how do you define that role and the opportunity it presents for you to serve California?
Yeah, so it's something that all students should understand and know more about. And I agree with you that most probably don't, because it's actually a really important role for higher education. So the lieutenant governor in California is the only person who sits on all three boards of higher education. So that includes the CSU trustees, it includes the Community College Board of Governors, and then for the purposes of this audience, it includes the UC Regents. And so it's this really important position to think about higher education, to think about workforce development in California. And so that's one of the main positions. There's also, it plays a really important environmental role. It's the lieutenant governor sits on the Coastal Commission, the State Lands Commission, and the Ocean Protection Council. And so the things that I wanna focus on, which includes scaling the service programs that I've built for the last several years, in California that are now, programs like College Corps that are now, providing debt-free pathways for thousands of students across the state of California who commit to serve while they're in school. I wanna scale these programs. I wanna create more opportunities for young people to earn and learn and get the chance to serve and contribute to their community while making college more affordable. I think the lieutenant governor is a critical position to be able to do that.
Elaborating a little bit on education, how do you plan to work with the governor and the legislature to not only increase access to affordable college education, but to also ensure that vocational trainings and apprenticeships are viable alternatives for those that aren't pursuing that 4-year degree?
Yeah, hugely important question, especially because and we have to recognize that most Californians, most Americans don't go to college. And we also have to recognize that in order to solve some of our really big challenges, whether it's building the homes that we need to build to make housing more affordable, whether it's building more clean energy so that we can actually solve climate change, we're going to need a workforce, a different kind of workforce that we don't have right now. We need more welders to build the wind turbines to tackle climate. We're going to need more people in the trades. So it's something I think a lot about, and it's really important that we're focused on this. I'll give you one example. I mentioned the service program that I created, College Corps, which does helps pay for college, but also for community college and for certificate programs as well if you serve and give back. But one of the things I'm working on with the chancellor of community colleges right now, so head of all the community college systems around California, which is about over 120 different university or colleges, is something called credit for prior learning, where if you serve while you're in high school and you work for somewhere like Habitat for Humanity and you learn how to build homes while you're in high school, but you also help the community, we're actually going to give you college credit on your way towards a certificate in the trades or towards a community college. So this is an example when I talk about scaling service, so that we can create more job pathways for people, where we can not only help more Californians, but we can actually solve some of our really big challenges. And it's why I think because of the special role that the lieutenant governor has in higher education, we can actually make this possible.
With that, how do you plan to address the climbing mountain of student debt that a lot of Californians are experiencing right now?
Yeah. It's crushing us. It's one of the main reasons I created College Core, which we have on Berkeley's campus. We also have on most of the other UCs, most CSUs, and dozens of community colleges. So the way, just to give you an idea of how College Core works, if you commit to 450 hours of service, you get $10,000 towards your degree, or towards to help pay for school. That $10,000 is how much a Pell Grant student or a low income student has to come up with by either taking out loans or by working. So when I was a Pell Grant student at Cal, I cleaned golf carts at Tilden Park Golf Course right up the hill from campus. Now we have thousands of students across California are getting a chance to tutor and mentor, to work in our food banks, to take climate action while helping them pay for school. So it's one example of how we're making college more affordable. But I got my start in politics. Honestly, my first foray or experience was as a student leader. I was ASUC vice president at camp on campus, and my big issue was focused on low income student housing and also keeping student fees down. And I would organize students, probably like yourself, Kira, and many others, to go to the Capitol and to lobby and organize. And that's where I learned how you really can create change and you really can do things like make college more affordable, and why I'm focused on it now, running for lieutenant governor.
Amazing. So, going back again to housing affordability, many attribute California's housing crisis to zoning restrictions, skyrocketing costs, and inadequate support for low income renters. How do you plan to address these issues without further gentrifying already vulnerable communities?
Yeah, listen, I think that the challenge here and housing, and I just mentioned the student housing work I did when I was on campus. Housing is a personal issue for me. My family, my brother and I once counted, we lived in 17 different homes before I turned 18. And so I understand what it's like when the landlord raises the rent and you have to move, and then you have to move again, and then you have to move again. And the truth is that there's a lot of pain in our communities right now in California. And so the way I've approached this is by focusing on the fact that we simply have a massive supply problem. We do not have enough homes, affordable or market rate for Californians, and part of that is because we've put regulations in place for good reasons, for good intentions, to protect the environment and protect our communities, all things we care about. The problem is that we've woken up decades later and we don't have enough housing for people, and so it's crushing working people, across the board. So what I focus on is how do we make it easier to build? How do we streamline regulation? How do we cut some of the red tape? But on also, and this is what I'm it's specifically focused on, in this, campaign for lieutenant governor, how do we build on underutilized public lots? So think about public land like parking lots or universities or campuses that have available land that we could be building much more housing for students, for workforce, for teachers, for faculty, for community members. So I think there's a lot we can do to be creative if we just actually had some urgency around this. And that's where I think the Democratic Party needs to get a lot more urgency around building homes. And we need to make sure that we don't just value process, that we actually stay focused on what progress are we making. And housing is like issue one, two, and three for working people in California right now.
Interesting. As Chief Service Officer, you've overseen programs like the California Climate Action Corps and the College Corps. So, how have these experiences shaped your perspective on government and on civic engagement?
Well, I had a chance after Cal, to serve in the United States Navy. I was an officer in the military, which is an incredible experience. And when I came home, I thought to myself, what would our country look like? What would America look like if more people had the experience that I had, where you get to work with people from very different backgrounds, very different perspectives, people who thought differently, who probably voted differently. but you actually got to solve problems together. You got to work together. And at the end of the day, that's what democracy is about. Democracy is about all of us coming together and figuring out how do we live together and how do we collectively take care of each other. And so when people don't get the chance to serve, I think it really undermines the sort of the foundational trust that a democracy relies on. And so I created these programs. When the governor got elected, he created this cabinet position for service, and we created the programs that you mentioned. And I think what we've seen is it's a total win-win-win. It's a win for young people who are now getting to experience how to actually create change in their communities and how to actually make a difference. It's a win for the communities because now we have young people who are doing incredible work for millions of hours throughout the state in our schools and our food banks and our parks. And it's a win for all of society because my hope is that what we're really doing is training an entire new generation of young people to know what it means to be involved, know what it means to actually work with people to solve problems. And that's what we're seeing. And that's why I want to run for lieutenant governor so we can actually scale these programs and make them available for every Californian, which is why I think we should have universal service where every Californian is given the chance to serve.
So, the role of lieutenant governor often involves navigating a highly polarized political landscape. So, what specific example can you point to where you've been successful in bipartisan collaboration? And how do you plan to build bridges on issues like climate change or housing, where the stakes are high but divides are very deep?
Yeah, great question. So I think about this a lot, and I'll mention one of the programs that we haven't talked in detail yet about it is Climate Corps. So I created the country's first statewide Climate Corps that's now spread to several other states, and you may remember that President Biden had created the American Climate Corps based off our program here in California. And we actually piloted that program to pay and engage young people around organizing and mobilizing in their communities around climate change. We piloted and launched that program in places like San Bernardino in California, the Inland Empire, places like Butte County outside of Chico. And these are conservative rural areas, Fresno, California. These are not liberal bastions. And what we saw was, and there's a reason why some of my closest colleagues that I work with are Republican mayors now who have seen the impact of these programs, is what I saw is that these issues touch everybody and everyone, no matter what community you're coming from, no matter what your political bent, everyone's trying to figure out how do we solve them? How do we protect our communities from wildfires? How do we make sure we have clean air and clean running water? How do we make sure that our young people can afford to go to college? These are universal questions that everyone's trying to figure out. And the service program that I built that we've been talking about, which by the way, our Climate Corps and our College Corps and the other service programs we built are now bigger than the entire Peace Corps just here in California. So we're at a really exciting scale. But it's all about bringing people together from different backgrounds just to work together and to solve problems. And it's why some of our biggest champions are Republican mayors across the state of California.
So, you come from a background of military service and of law. So, how do those experiences prepare you, excuse me, for the unique responsibilities of a statewide office?
Good question. Well, there's I guess here's how I answer that. Maybe with a quick story, because when you ask that question, what I think about is being on a military base on about 5 o'clock on the after a Friday afternoon when a 9.0 earthquake hit. And for those of us who are from California, we're used to earthquakes, but this thing lasted 3 minutes long. And it instantly led to a tsunami that killed tens of thousands of people. It displaced hundreds of thousands of people. And because I was on the base that had the nuclear aircraft carrier, we had the technology to detect that where we started to detect radiation from a place called Fukushima. And it was the beginning of the Fukushima nuclear disaster. And I was then sent immediately out to sea to join the admiral to oversee the entire disaster relief effort, which called Operation Tomodachi. It ended up becoming one of the largest in military history. And the reason I share that story in context to your question is not because I was the hero of the story by any means. I played a small role in a much bigger mission, but I learned what it takes to get through a crisis. And in order to get through a crisis, everyone has a role to play and everyone has to play that role. And you have to bring people together and you have to work together. And the truth is, and we've talked about some of this today, but our country and our state is in a crisis. We talked about a few of them: a political crisis, a climate crisis, an affordability crisis, a college debt crisis. And the question is how are we going to get through this? And from my what I've learned in the military and the different roles that I've had also in government is that we have to call on everybody and we have to bring everyone together and we have to figure out new ways to work together. We need the climate community and activist and environmental community to work with the housing community, business to work with labor. We need to find new ways to work together and everyone's got to play a role. And that's some of the experience that I take very directly from my military and law experience that I hope to bring to this role as lieutenant governor.
How do you plan to hold yourself and your administration accountable if you're chosen as lieutenant governor? And what metrics or milestones are you promising voters?
Yeah.
There you go.
These are fantastic questions. Good job. Way to come prepared. So here's what I think. I feel like, and I think I've been a Democrat my whole life, but I feel like we have to look ourselves in the mirror. And I think too often we became the party of good intentions and stop caring about outcomes. Stop caring about how people's lives are actually being impacted. And the only thing we should care about are outcomes. Are young people learning? Are people able to afford college? Can people afford a place to live? Are we reducing homelessness? And if the answer is no, we have to be willing to change course. We have to be willing to redirect and reform government where it needs reform. And so I that's the mentality that I hope that I plan to bring. It's also why I think we need a new generation of leaders in Sacramento, a new generation of elected leaders to bring a different kind of approach and a different kind of urgency to creating real outcomes. And the things that I'm focused on, and these are the policy proposals I've rolled out already. One is creating universal service so that every young person in California has the same kind of chance that I had to serve and to contribute, but also to know that they belong and that they're part of something and to help shape the community around them. I've also put out a proposal to create 1,000,000 units of housing on these underutilized public vacant lots that we've been talking about. And so those are the kinds of metrics that I'm going to wake up every single day focused on to make sure that we do make California more affordable and that we create more opportunity for people like you and me that have had a chance to go to incredible public schools in California. So I appreciate the spirit of that question because I actually think it's why we need a new generation of leaders to come and to be able to really value and govern by being focused on progress over process.
So, if we're now looking ahead, 4 to 8 years, what does success look like to you under your leadership? If someone was to say in 2030, yes, Friday's term made a difference, what would they point to?
Yeah, I think they'd point to more Californians having had the experience of knowing that they're needed, that they have something to contribute and have been given the chance to actually shape the community around them as a tutor and a mentor, as someone who helped protect their community from wildfires, as someone who kept their food banks operational, serving people who need it. I think what they would point to is a society where people were much more connected, where people both knew their neighbors, but then we're also much more willing to serve and help their neighbors than they are today. We live in a very disconnected and isolated society, which is ironic because we all have these things in our hands that are supposed to keep us more connected. And yet people are isolated and people are lonely. And so I think part of what we need to do, and we're going to be able to measure it, is are we creating a more connected society, a different kind of culture? I also think we're going to be able to point to a more affordable California, where a teacher, I want you to imagine a teacher or one of your professors waking up in a home that they can afford, an apartment or a condo that they can afford, going downstairs, walking out their door, and then walking to class because they get to live right where they work. That's the kind of California we should imagine, and that's the kind of California I think we'll be able to point to at the end of my term.
Amazing. For my last question for you today, in a race with so many qualified candidates, why should voters choose you over your competitors? What unique vision do you offer, and how will you hold yourself accountable to these promises?
I I think I bring a unique perspective as a veteran, as a two-time Cal grad, as someone who got to live the California dream. As I said before, my parents didn't have college degrees, but I had this incredible opportunity to go to one of the most amazing public institutions in the world, and it gave me everything. And I understand that. I understand what it takes to create that, and now I wanna make sure that every other kid in California has the same opportunity, and I'm gonna be able to take my experience as not just a Cal grad, but as a military officer, as someone who's run large organizations, national organizations focused on climate change and poverty, as a former mayor, and now as a cabinet official in the Newsom administration who's built a service force larger than the entire Peace Corps, to bring that experience to bring a new approach, a new energy to actually solve the problems facing our society, which are real. And we need to have urgency around it. We need to recognize we are in a crisis, and we need people who have led us through crises before to help us get out of where we are right now. And that's what I plan to do as your lieutenant governor.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I can't wait to share your story with all of our students here at Cal. Go Bears!
Go Bears. I love it. Thank you, Kira.